Joining us now, Jimmy Pethokoukis, CNBC contributor from the American Enterprise Institute, and Brian Fitzpatrick, former clerk for Justice Scalia and a law professor at Vanderbilt University. Gentlemen, good afternoon to you both. Jimmy, before we get on to his potential views on business, will he definitely get confirmed?
I think there is a high likelihood of him being confirmed. Already, you have some of the senators, moderate senators like Collins, praising his qualifications. While that's not the same thing as saying they'll vote for him, it's certainly a good sign. And listen, Kavanaugh, he's been in D.C. He has been, I guarantee, he has been preparing sort of mentally for this moment. And I would put heavy money that he'll be confirmed.
So, Brian, what does it mean for big business at the court? Already scoring some big victories with the conservative majority. Does it get even more pro-business as we look to the fall?
It may very well. Justice Kennedy, who he would be replacing, was already very pro-business, so it's kind of hard to beat Justice Kennedy, but Judge Kavanaugh could do it. He has a much more limited view of what the administrative state, the regulatory agencies should be allowed to get away with, and so I could see him cracking down on regulatory actions by the Environmental Protection Agency, et cetera, a little bit more than Justice Kennedy did. So I think it's probably going to be good for markets, good for capitalism.
Jimmy, how significantly good is it for things like markets and capitalism? Are there certain sectors that stand out in your mind that he's likely to favor?
You know, one thing that really popped out is his view on antitrust. That's been a big issue. I'm sure you've talked about it. There's this growing movement to take a much harder look at these big technology companies, Google, Facebook, whether they should be broken up in some fashion. And there's a lot of sort of novel theorizing on the left about new ways of looking at antitrust. He's going to be deeply skeptical of that. He's a very sort of traditional sort of Robert Bork consumer welfare standard kind of justice. And under that standard, it'd be very tough to go after these companies under antitrust. We have an Apple case maybe coming up over the next year, whether the Apple Store is a monopoly. I would expect that gets to the court, that a Justice Kavanaugh will be deeply skeptical of any effort to go after these companies because they're providing, obviously massive consumer benefits, and it's tough to argue against that under that standard.
Apple v. Pepper, expected to come up in the next session. Brian, what about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? A lot is being made of Judge Kavanaugh's past comments about it potentially being unconstitutional. Not sure whether that's relevant or if there's a case coming up, but should that agency, which was, of course, created during the Obama administration to champion consumers, it's been heralded by Elizabeth Warren and others, be worried?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that not just that agency, but, his view basically is that the president is supposed to be in charge of these agencies. That's how we have political accountability for what the agencies do. If the president's not in charge of the people that run the agencies, these are like headless institutions that the American people can't control. And so his view is that if you're in charge of an agency, the president ought to have powers to remove you. And that was not the case with the CFPB. And so his view was there's a constitutional problem with that. And so I think it's good for presidential power, which is good for political accountability.
Jimmy, just stepping away from the business view very quickly, how much of a conservative shift would he represent?
Well, listen, he's a conservative justice by almost any measure. This is a shift to the right from Kennedy, where before he had Kennedy as a swing vote, now maybe Justice Roberts as a swing vote. So when you go from Kennedy to Roberts, that is a marked shift to the right. I don't think there's any way to argue against that. I mean, conservatives should be pretty happy with this pick. I mean, the court is moving right. That's been a long-term goal, and it may not be the last pick for the president either.
Does it help Republicans in the midterms quickly, Brian?
I think it could, because, judges is a very powerful issue for Republican voters. We have a very clear theory and philosophy about how judges should do their job. They shouldn't be making law. They should be following the law. He fits in with that. I think it's very easy to explain to the American people why that's a good thing. And so I think it's a plus for Republicans.
Okay, gents, thanks very much for joining us.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.